My grandmother could pull 30 pounds of tomatoes from a garden the size of a parking space, while her neighbors were lucky to get 5. And she did it working about half the time they did. How? She wasn't stronger, she didn't have better dirt, and she definitely wasn't out there every day fussing over things. She just knew tricks that most people have completely forgotten. These weren't complicated techniques that required special equipment or a degree in agriculture. They were simple, clever shortcuts that let her grow massive amounts of food without breaking her back or emptying her wallet. The kind of methods that make you slap your forehead and say, "Why didn't I think of that?" So if you're tired of spending your weekends weeding, your paycheck on fertilizer, and your energy dragging hoses around while still getting mediocre harvests, pay attention. Because these 20 techniques will change how you think about gardening completely. The newspaper trick that kills weeds before they start. You know what my grandmother never did? Spend her Saturday mornings pulling weeds like some kind of medieval punishment. She did not have a magical garden where weeds decided to take a vacation. She just refused to let them grow in the first place. Here is the thing about weeds. They are opportunists. Give them sunlight, and they will throw a party in your tomato patch. My grandma figured this out about 60 years before I did, which explains why I spent my 20s with dirt under my fingernails and a sore back. Her secret weapon was yesterday's newspaper, not even kidding. Every week she would save the newspapers. Back then, everyone got the physical paper delivered. None of this phone scrolling nonsense. She would stack them up by the back door, and come planting time she had a pile ready to go. I used to think she was just being cheap about recycling fees. It turned out she was building an army against weeds. Here is exactly what she did, and trust me, this works whether you are using newspapers from 1960 or 2026. First, she would wet the newspapers completely. And I mean soaking wet, like you dropped them in a bathtub. This is not optional, because dry newspaper blows away the second a breeze shows up, and you will be chasing comic sections across 3 yards. Wet newspaper stays put and molds to the soil. Then she would lay them down between her garden rows, about 6 to 10 sheets thick. Not 2 sheets, not 4 sheets. 6 to 10. This is important because you need enough layers to actually block sunlight. Weeds are basically solar-powered annoyances. Cut off their power source and they give up before they even start. The coverage had to be complete, too. No gaps, no holes, and no casual excuses. Weeds will find a 1/4-inch opening and exploit it like they are planning a heist. Overlap the edges of your newspaper by at least 3 inches. Pretend you are wallpapering, but for dirt. Now here is where it gets clever. She would plant her vegetables first, in their rows, with proper spacing. The newspaper went down in the pathways between rows and around the base of the plants. Then she would cut small holes in the newspaper right where each plant sat, just big enough for the stem. This gave the vegetables room to grow, while surrounding them with an impenetrable weed barrier. But she did not stop there. Bare newspaper looks terrible, and it also breaks down too fast if the sun hits it directly. So she would cover the whole thing with 2 to 3 inches of mulch. Wood chips were her favorite, but straw works great too. Grass clippings work in a pinch, though they mat down and get slimy if you pile them too thick. This mulch layer does double duty. It holds the newspaper in place, makes your garden look intentional instead of like you are storing recycling in the vegetables, and it adds another barrier against weeds. Plus, as both the newspaper and mulch break down over time, they add organic matter to your soil. You are literally improving your garden by being lazy about weeding. The newspaper itself lasts about 4 to 6 months before it decomposes completely. For most vegetables, that covers the entire growing season. By the time the paper is gone, your plants are established and big enough that they shade out most weeds naturally. And the ones that do try to grow are coming up through loose, fluffy, decomposed newspaper and mulch, which means they pull out with basically 0 effort. My grandmother's garden paths stayed clear all summer while her neighbors were out there every weekend doing the bend and pull routine. She would be sitting on the porch with iced tea, watching them work, probably thinking about how much time they were wasting. She never said it out loud, but you could see it in her face. The cost of this system? Basically nothing. Newspapers are free if you get them delivered, or you can grab them from recycling bins with permission. Mulch might cost you $20 for a whole season if you do not have a tree guy who will dump wood chips in your driveway for free. Compare that to hours of your life spent crouched in the dirt cursing at crabgrass. I ignored this trick for years because it seemed too simple. I bought weed barriers from the garden center, those fabric things that cost $40 and rip the first time you look at them wrong. I tried landscape plastic that created a sauna under my tomatoes and murdered half my plants. I even tried one of those flame weeder things, which is exactly as dangerous as it sounds. Then one spring, I was complaining about weeding to my aunt, and she said, "Your grandma never weeded. Why do not you do what she did?" So I tried the newspaper trick. It took me about 30 minutes to lay it all down. I spent maybe another 20 minutes covering it with mulch. I weeded exactly twice that entire summer. Twice! Both times took less than 5 minutes because the few weeds that appeared pulled out like they were barely trying to hang on. Now I am a believer. Every spring I save newspapers specifically for this. My neighbors think I am eccentric, which is fine. They can think whatever they want while they are weeding, and I am not. But keeping weeds out is only half the battle. Grandma also knew exactly which plants to put in the garden, and some of them were not even vegetables. Why she planted marigolds everywhere. Walk into any old-timer's vegetable garden and you'll notice something strange. Flowers, lots of them, specifically marigolds popping up between the tomatoes, next to the peppers, surrounding the squash like tiny orange bodyguards. Most people think this is just for looks. It's not. Marigolds are basically the bouncers of the garden world. They don't just sit there looking pretty, they're actively kicking out troublemakers you can't even see. Underground, their roots release a chemical that nematodes absolutely hate. These are microscopic worms that chew through plant roots like they're at an all-you-can-eat buffet. One marigold plant sends out a get-lost signal through several feet of soil. The setup is dead simple. Every 2 to 3 feet throughout your vegetable beds, stick a marigold. That's it. You can plant them from seed for about $2 a packet, or grab starter plants if you're impatient. They grow fast, they don't complain, and they bloom all season without you doing anything. But here's where it gets better. Those bright yellow and orange flowers also repel aphids, which are tiny insects that suck the life out of your vegetable plants. Mosquitoes don't like the smell either, which means fewer bites while you're picking beans. Even rabbits tend to avoid areas with heavy marigold coverage because the scent messes with their ability to smell the vegetables they actually want to eat. 1 packet of marigold seeds protects your entire garden for 4 months. Compare that to buying pest sprays every few weeks, which cost 10 times as much and require you to actually remember to spray things. Marigolds just do their job automatically while you forget they exist. And if you get bored or want to brighten up the kitchen, you can cut a handful for a free bouquet. They last about a week in a vase. So you're getting pest control and flowers from the same plant, which is the kind of efficiency that makes sense when you're not interested in doing extra work. The whole system runs itself. Plant once, water occasionally, ignore completely. Meanwhile, your vegetables are protected, and your garden looks intentional instead of like you just threw seeds at dirt and hoped for the best. Of course, keeping pests away only matters if your plants actually get enough water, and there's a much smarter way to handle that than standing around with a hose. Watering gardens is where most people waste ridiculous amounts of time. Standing there with a hose, spraying everything, watching half of it run off or evaporate before the plants even get a drink. There is a reason older gardeners were not doing that. They buried buckets. Sounds weird until you understand why it works. Take any 5-gallon bucket. You can get one free from restaurants, or buy one for $3 at a hardware store. Grab a drill, and make 8 to 10 holes around the bottom and lower sides. The holes should be about the width of a pencil. Not huge, not tiny, just enough for water to seep out slowly. Now bury that bucket right in your garden bed. Leave about 2 inches sticking up above the soil so you can still pour water into it. The rest goes underground, sitting right in the middle of where your plants are growing. Here is what happens. You fill the bucket once or twice a week. The water does not sit on top of the soil where the sun can evaporate it. It does not run off to the edges where nothing is growing. Instead, it seeps out slowly through those holes directly into the root zone where plants actually use it. The soil acts like a sponge, pulling moisture outward in all directions. Plants near these buried buckets grew 40% faster in side-by-side tests because their roots stayed consistently moist. Not drowning, not drying out, just right. And you are using way less water overall because none of it is being wasted. The time savings is insane. Fill 3 buckets in 5 minutes and you are done watering for 3 or 4 days, depending on how hot it is. No dragging hoses, no standing around, no forgetting to water and coming back to wilted plants. This works especially well for big, thirsty plants like tomatoes, squash, and melons. Stick a bucket near each one at planting time. As the plant grows, its roots will actually grow toward the bucket, because that is where the reliable water source is. You can even throw a lid on top of the bucket to keep mosquitoes from breeding in there, though if you are filling it regularly, they will not have time to become a problem. Some people drop a flat rock over the opening for the same reason. The whole system costs maybe $10 if you are buying everything new, and the buckets last for years. Drill the holes once and you are set. No fancy irrigation equipment, no timers, no filters, no maintenance. Just buckets doing exactly what buckets do, holding water and letting it out slowly. But even with perfect watering, plants still need food, and one of the best fertilizers comes from something most people dump in the trash every single morning. Coffee grounds. Weren't trash, they were garden gold. Every morning, millions of people brew coffee and throw the grounds straight into the garbage. That is approximately 2 million tons per year in America alone, according to the Environmental Protection Agency. All of it goes to landfills, when it could be feeding gardens instead. Coffee grounds are loaded with nitrogen, which is the main nutrient plants need for growing leaves and stems. It is the same stuff you are paying for in those bags of fertilizer at the garden center, except you are making it for free every time you drink coffee. The process could not be simpler. Keep a container by the coffee maker. Every time you brew a pot, dump the used grounds in there. When the container is full, take it outside and sprinkle the grounds around your plants. Work them into the top inch or 2 of soil with your fingers or a small rake. That is the entire system. Tomatoes love this stuff. So do blueberries, roses, and most leafy greens like lettuce and spinach. The grounds slightly acidify the soil, which these plants prefer. You are not going to hurt anything by adding coffee grounds unless you absolutely bury a plant under 6 inches of them, which would be difficult and weird. But the nitrogen boost is not even the best part. Slugs and snails hate crawling over coffee grounds. The texture is rough and scratchy on their soft bodies, like asking someone to walk barefoot across sandpaper. They will go around or give up entirely. Sprinkle a border of grounds around vulnerable plants, and you have built a barrier that actually works. The grounds also improve soil drainage, which matters in heavy clay soils that tend to stay waterlogged. As they break down, they add organic matter that loosens up compacted dirt. Earthworms love them too, and earthworms are basically unpaid employees who aerate your soil and leave behind their own fertilizer. If you do not drink coffee, ask at a local coffee shop. Most of them are happy to give away their used grounds because otherwise they are paying to have them hauled to the dump. Some shops even bag them up and leave them by the door with a sign that says "Free for Gardens." The whole thing costs nothing and takes maybe 30 seconds per day. Brew coffee, save grounds, dump on the garden. You are fertilizing and controlling pests at the same time with garbage. That is the kind of thinking that let people grow huge gardens without spending half their paycheck at the garden store. Now, even the best fertilizer will not help if you are wasting space, and most people are wasting a lot more space than they realize. 5. Planting in triangles, not rows. Traditional gardening books will tell you to plant in straight rows, 1 neat line of lettuce, another neat line of carrots, everything organized like a tiny farm. This made sense when people were using horse-drawn plows and needed room for equipment to fit between rows. You do not have a horse. You probably do not even have a plow. So why are you planting like you do? There is a better way that fits about 15% more plants in the exact same space. Instead of rows, plant in a triangle pattern. If you have ever seen how oranges are stacked at a grocery store, that is the idea. Each plant sits in the gap between two plants in the row before it. Here's why this matters. A 10 by 10 foot garden bed planted in traditional rows holds maybe 40 lettuce plants with proper spacing. That same bed planted in triangles holds 46 plants. You just gained 6 free lettuces without making your garden bigger. The math works because triangular spacing eliminates wasted areas. In row planting, you have big empty spots between rows where nothing is growing. In triangle planting, every available inch has a plant in it. You are filling the gaps that row planting leaves behind. But the benefits go beyond just fitting more plants. When vegetables are planted close together in triangles, their leaves touch and create a living canopy over the soil. This shades the ground, which keeps it cooler and reduces water evaporation. You are watering less frequently because the soil is not drying out as fast. The plants also support each other. A slight breeze does not knock them over because they are packed together like they are holding hands, and weeds have a much harder time getting started because there is no open soil with sunlight hitting it directly. The spacing still needs to be correct for whatever you are growing. Lettuce needs about 6 inches between plants. Tomatoes need 24 inches. The difference is you are measuring that distance in all directions to create triangles instead of just in 2 directions to create rows. Some people worry this makes harvesting harder because you cannot walk between rows, but you can still reach everything from the edges if your bed is not wider than 4 feet. If it is wider, step on a board laid across the bed so you are not compacting the soil with your feet. The whole approach is just smarter use of available space. You are getting more food from the same amount of dirt, water, and effort. That is the entire point of gardening efficiently. Maximum output with minimum input. Speaking of efficiency, starting seeds from scratch is where a lot of people spend money they do not need to spend. Seed starter trays at the garden center cost anywhere from $10 to $20. They are plastic, they crack after 1 season, and they take up space in your garage for 11 months of the year. Meanwhile, you are throwing away the perfect seed starting system every time you make breakfast. Cardboard egg cartons are basically free biodegradable seed trays that work better than the expensive versions. Save them throughout the winter. When spring comes, and it is time to start seeds indoors, you have everything you need. Fill each cup in the carton with seed starting mix. You can buy this at any garden center or make your own by mixing equal parts peat moss, vermiculite, and compost. Either way, fill the cups right to the top. Do not pack it down hard, keep it loose and fluffy. Drop 1 or 2 seeds into each cup. The exact depth depends on what you are planting, but the general rule is to bury seeds twice as deep as they are wide. Tiny seeds like lettuce barely get covered. Bigger seeds like beans go down about 1/2 inch. Water gently until the soil is moist but not soaking wet. Put the whole carton on a tray or in a shallow box to catch drips, then set it in a sunny window or under a grow light. Keep the soil moist by misting it with a spray bottle every day or 2. Here is where the magic happens. When your seedlings are big enough to transplant, usually when they have 2 or 3 sets of real leaves, you do not have to pop them out of anything. Just cut the egg carton apart with scissors so each plant is in its own cup. Then plant the entire cup directly in the ground. The cardboard decomposes within a few weeks, so the roots grow right through it into the surrounding soil. There is no transplant shock because you never disturb the roots. The seedling does not even know it moved. It just keeps growing like nothing happened. This method works especially well for plants that hate having their roots messed with. Cucumbers, squash, and melons all do better when started this way, but honestly, it works for everything. Tomatoes, peppers, herbs, flowers. If you can start it from seed, you can start it in an egg carton. The cost comparison is ridiculous. A dozen eggs gives you 12 free planting spots. Eat eggs regularly and you can start 60 or more plants for the price of the seed starting mix. Those fancy plastic trays are still sitting on the shelf at the store where they belong. but getting seeds to sprout is only useful if you are planting them correctly. And most people are planting tomatoes completely wrong. 7. Why her tomatoes grew sideways. On purpose. Every gardening guide will tell you to dig a hole, stick the tomato plant in upright, and fill the dirt back in. That is fine if you want average results. But there is a technique that creates a root system 30 to 50% larger, which means bigger plants and way more tomatoes. You plant them sideways. On purpose. It looks absolutely insane the first time you do it, but the science is solid. Here's how it works. When you buy tomato seedlings or start them yourself, they come with a long stem that had leaves on it lower down. Those leaves were removed, but the stem is still there. That entire stem has the potential to grow roots if it is buried underground. Instead of digging a normal hole straight down, dig a shallow trench. It only needs to be about 3 to 4 inches deep, but make it long enough to lay most of the tomato plant horizontally. You are basically making a small ditch. Take your tomato seedling and lay it in the trench with only the top 3 to 4 inches of the plant sticking up above ground. Yes, the plant is now at a 90-degree angle. Do not worry about it. Gently bend that top part so it is pointing up toward the sky. Then fill the trench back in with soil, burying everything except those top few inches. What happens next is the clever part. The buried stem does not just sit there. Within a week or two, it starts growing roots all along its length. Where you had maybe a dozen roots coming from the bottom of the original root ball, you now have roots emerging from 6 or 8 inches of buried stem. The plant has massively increased its ability to pull water and nutrients from the soil. The top of the plant looks weird for about a week. It will have a bend in it where you curved it upward out of the trench. But tomatoes are programmed to grow toward the sun, so that bend straightens out quickly. Within 10 days, the plant looks completely normal, except it is sitting on a root system that is significantly bigger than a traditionally planted tomato. This technique is especially useful in sandy soils that do not hold moisture well, or in hot climates where water evaporates quickly. The deeper, wider root system can tap into moisture that shallow roots never reach. You end up watering less frequently while the plant performs better. Research from the University of Minnesota confirmed this works. They did side-by-side comparisons and found that horizontally planted tomatoes established faster, grew larger, and produced more fruit than identically sized plants planted upright in the same soil on the same day. There is one small thing to watch for. When you bury the stem, make sure you remove any leaves that would end up underground. Buried leaves rot, and rot leads to disease. Strip off everything that will be under the soil line, leaving only bare stem to bury. You can use the same technique with peppers, eggplants, and tomatillos. Any plant in that family has the ability to grow roots from its stem. It is a built-in advantage you would be silly not to use. Now, sideways planting creates bigger individual plants, but there is also a way to make multiple plants work together. Companion planting, the Three Sisters method. Native Americans figured out something brilliant about 500 years before modern agriculture caught up. If you plant corn, beans, and squash in the same spot, all three grow better than if you planted them separately. This combination is called the Three Sisters, and it is one of the smartest examples of companion planting ever developed. Here is why it works. Corn grows tall and straight with a strong stalk. Once it is about a foot high, you plant beans at the base of each corn plant. Beans are climbers. They need something to hold on to as they grow upward. The corn stalk becomes a living pole for the beans. But beans are not just hitching a free ride. They are legumes, which means they have a special relationship with bacteria in the soil. These bacteria take nitrogen from the air and convert it into a form that plants can use. The beans are essentially making fertilizer and sharing it with the corn and squash. All three plants benefit from the extra nitrogen. Now add squash to the mix. Squash plants sprawl along the ground with huge, prickly leaves. They shade the soil, which keeps it cooler and prevents moisture from evaporating as quickly. The big leaves also block sunlight from reaching the ground, which stops weeds before they can get started. Plus, many animals do not like walking through squash plants because the leaves and stems have tiny spines that are irritating to paws and legs. Squash acts as excellent ground cover. You are getting 3 different vegetables from a 4x4 foot square of garden. No extra space, no extra work, just smart planning. The corn provides structure, the beans provide fertilizer, and the squash provides ground cover. They are like roommates who actually get along and help with each other's chores. The planting. Timing matters though. You cannot throw all 3 in the ground at once. Start with corn in late spring after the soil warms up. When the corn is about 6 inches to a foot tall and well established, plant the beans. Wait another week or 2, then add the squash. This staggered approach gives each plant time to get established without competing too much in the early stages. For corn, plant 4 or 5 seeds in a small circle about a foot across. This creates a little cluster of corn stalks that support each other. Around the outside of that circle, plant your beans, maybe 6 to 8 bean seeds. Then 2 feet away from the corn cluster, plant 2 or 3 squash seeds. Traditional varieties work best for this. Modern sweet corn varieties are often too short or too weak stalked to support beans properly. Look for field corn or dent corn varieties. For beans, use pole beans rather than bush beans. They are bred to climb. For squash, winter squash varieties like pumpkins or butternut work great because they are vigorous spreaders. Try using traditional varieties when possible. Harvest is staggered too, which is actually convenient. The beans come first in midsummer. The corn ripens in late summer. The squash is ready in early fall. You are getting food from the same patch of ground for 3 solid months without replanting anything. This staggered harvest stretches your yield and reduces effort. This principle applies beyond just these 3 plants. The idea is to pair plants that help each other. Banana peels buried at planting time. Fertilizer companies want you to think plant food is complicated. You need this special formula for tomatoes, that different mix for peppers, another one for roses. Meanwhile, you are throwing away one of the best fertilizers every time you eat a banana. Banana peels are ridiculously high in potassium, the nutrient that helps plants flower and produce fruit. It is the 3rd number on fertilizer bags. Commercial fertilizer gives you potassium in chemical form. Banana peels give it to you for free, and they release slowly over weeks instead of all at once. The technique is simple. Every time you eat a banana, put the peel in a bag in your freezer. Freezing them keeps them from getting disgusting and attracting fruit flies. When planting time comes, you will have a stash ready to go. When you are planting tomatoes or peppers, dig your hole 2 inches deeper than you normally would. Chop up 1 or 2 frozen banana peels and drop them in the bottom of that hole. Then set your plant on top and fill the dirt back in like normal. The peels sit at the bottom of the root zone where they will slowly break down. As the peels decompose, they release potassium gradually. The plant's roots grow down into them, pulling nutrients out exactly when needed. It is like a slow-release fertilizer capsule, except it costs you nothing and came from breakfast. The results show up fast. Tomato and pepper plants that got banana peels start flowering about 2 to 3 weeks earlier than plants without them. Earlier flowers mean earlier fruit, which means you are picking tomatoes in July instead of August. For northern gardeners with short growing seasons, those extra weeks matter a lot. You can also use banana peels as a top dressing. Chop them up and work them into the soil around established plants or lay them on top of the soil as mulch. They will break down within a week or 2 in warm weather. Some people make banana peel tea by soaking peels in water for a few days, then using that water for feeding plants. It works, but honestly, just burying them is easier and just as effective. The only thing to watch for is animals. Fresh banana peels smell like food because they are food. If you have problems with raccoons, possums, or other critters digging in your garden, bury the peels deeper, at least 6 to 8 inches down. Once they are underground and covered with soil, animals cannot smell them. By the time they decompose enough to create any scent, they are already broken down too much for animals to care about. Some people worry about pesticides on banana peels since most bananas are not organic. The pesticides are mostly on the outside of the peel, and they break down quickly once the peel starts decomposing in soil. If you are really concerned, Rinse the peels before freezing them. But honestly, the benefits far outweigh any minimal risk. This same principle works with other kitchen scraps, but we will get to that later. First, there is a completely different way to grow tomatoes that barely anyone knows about.